Gina Faustino and this is Marie Kelly, and we both together did Crafts in the Classroom in Scoil Carmel in Fir House in Callan, and that's a picture of our school there.
So I'll just say a few words about our school in Fir House. Fir House National School was established in 1865 and our present premises was built in 1954. Scoil Carmel Fir House is a mixed junior school in an urban setting in South Dublin. 440 pupils are enrolled in the school, and classes in the school comprise of local children, newcomer children, children from overseas, special needs children and children from the travelling community. We have 24 full-time teachers, 1 part-time teacher, 6 SNAs, secretary, caretaker and principal. We have a great tradition of art in our school, and we host an annual art exhibition and open evening. Teachers in our school endeavour to cover all strands of the visual arts curriculum. Right, this is our team. Our team is our wonderful 28 second-class children, our gifted artist Gina, our class teacher Tricia Galvin, and I'm the resource teacher Marie Kelly.
So this is the day that the wool actually arrived, so we were very excited. We got to open up the box, and this is them all holding the wool up in the air. These are all our students, all 28 of them.
Now, why did we apply for Craft in the Classroom? Well, we applied for it because we felt that this would be a very worthwhile experience from many points of view. In particular, it would provide a link between Scoil Carmel and the wider community, and it would assist in the implementation of the aims and objectives of the visual arts curriculum. Now, we felt that the project would assist in implementing these 2 particular aims and objectives. And it is important that children are enabled to make connections between the work of artists and their own work. And by introducing the children to a range of craft processes, we enable them to develop an appreciation for good taste and good workmanship. Creativity was promoted throughout the project, and an atmosphere of enjoyment was created, and a sense of fun permeated each session. The visual arts curriculum has 6 strands: drawing, paint and colour, print, clay, construction and fabric and fibre. As a staff, we identified the fabric and fibre strand as an area we needed to explore more fully. And we felt that the input of an artist would be an enriching experience for both teachers and pupils. We fully endorse the emphasis in the curriculum. The process of making is as valuable as the final product, and the children are given the opportunity to work collaboratively. And indeed they did, because they made decisions about design. The project involved integration and linkage. It incorporated cross-curricular activities. Different subject areas interacted with the project: SESE, science, history, geography, oral language. It also lended itself to linkage across the strands of the visual arts curriculum: paint and colour, construction and drawing.
So this takes us now to the very beginning, that we established all the different classes and how we were going to develop the project. So there had been a discussion that they wanted something that was quite large, something that they could display inside the school. So I went to the school just to evaluate what the space was and what we could do and what would be the starting point for that. So we divided up the sessions into about 6 sessions. We had a taster session, and then we had various other classes that we organised between us and how we would develop the whole project. So that's sort of the timeline, and that's my little sign saying on the way to Scoil Carmel.
So on our taster session, the children had the opportunity to handle samples of Gina's work and to look at and talk about the work of artists. Gina explained the process of felting, and the children made a piece of felt. The children were encouraged to talk, to give opinions, and to discuss. They were stimulated by hearing the ideas and the opinions of others, and they had the opportunity to react, and this facilitated social and personal development. This was probably actually one of the most exciting parts, I think, of the whole process. Because on the first day I said I was going to explain what was felt, and they had no idea what it was. And I prepared this slideshow, and they got to go into the older children's room and see a slideshow on a white screen. So this was, you can't imagine how exciting this really was. It was more the white screen than anything they were going to see. So we started off by saying what was felt. So I started off with sheep, and there was lots of oohs and ahs and different kinds of things. And this is how it started. So I had lots of different types of images. And I just wanted feedback. I wanted them to tell me what it was. Because I hadn't told them at this stage what was felt. So I started off by showing various pictures of different things. And I would ask them, what do you think that is? No, that's a flower, that's this. This here, what's this? And they're like, oh, I eat those in church on a Sunday. And then, there'd be one that would put up his hand and say, no, my brother has a guitar. So there were certain ones that challenged them more than others. So I showed them just lots of different images. This one I particularly like again, and what is that? It's bananas with a chocolate center, so there's all sorts of interesting feedbacks. And it started just making them aware that actually felt was all around them. This was, according to them, a very prickly, soft cactus. There was a cactus inside. So I just had, this is lots of balls, they said, on fluffy toilet paper. So lots of different, that was actually, according to them, red Kit Kats, which they'd never seen. Lots of different images, and I had just grabbed lots of images, it was only just to prompt them to see that it was all around them. This one they got stuck on, so I showed them this picture, that one, and I showed them those two, and I said, what do you think that is, and have you seen this? And one child put up his hand, and I said, well, are your walls normally like this? And one child, he said, mine are sometimes in the attic. So I assumed he was having some building done, so I just wanted to say that sometimes in ecologically friendly houses, you can use wool. It all comes from the same thing. So at the end of this slide, I said, what do you think all these things are made of? And it was, they're made of wool. And so that's how the whole thing started. So I then started, where does the wool come from? So I showed them sheep, and lots of them. And different types of ones. There was lots of oohs and ahs. And then I said, what happens in the summer? And there's the baby sheep. And then it was like, oh, so this is the wool coming off. And I said to them, well, they get very hot in the summer. So that was them after they'd had their haircuts in the wool. And I just prompted them. I said, what do you do if you've been out in the yard and you've got your hair all messy and you have grass on top, you have to wash it? I said, exactly, you have to clean it. So I had just various images just to prompt them. And they were like, oh, that was very dirty sheep. There was the dirty water. And then about, what do you do after you've washed your hair? They said, oh, you get tangles. So I said, well, you have to brush it. And I showed them different strands, and it was actually interesting. I remember when I stuck in this particular slide, just showing different types of hairs, I thought it might be a bit too much over their head, but they were like, no, no, and I said, those are scales, and that's how the felting then gets stuck, it gets all tangled. So I showed them various images. They thought this was disgusting. I told them they were just doing well, and this was intestines, according to them, colored intestines. And that's how the colors. And I showed them how there actually is a huge tradition that started in the East, and you can see them making a rug. So they were very impressed by this, that it was so big, and they were like, are we going to make something really big too? So they were fascinated by this. So I showed them various images, and I ended with this beautiful hut here, and they were like, oh, we could build one of those in the backyard. So that was the taster session. And we then made something very, very small, which was just a ball, just for them to have a sense of it, and also for me just to see what their hand coordinations were and how I was going to carry that out. And they then wrote stories about the first day and me coming and all of that. So between each class, there was a lot of writing and developing of all of that.
That's right, and the children tracked the project with pupil diaries.
So then on the first session, I came in, this is me, this is my car full of stuff. So we were very tight on budget, so I managed to get all sorts of people to sponsor us and beg a lot. And you can see some insulation tubes in my car, which we then chopped up and made into rotors. So I was very conscious that they should see where everything was coming from, rather than me show up and say, well, I've already cut these, and then not know what the origin was. So that's them, the insulation tubes, lots of wool and bits and pieces.
This activity lent itself to a linkage across the visual arts curriculum to the others, to paint and colour and drawing. And the children chose the colours to match or contrast to their work. So they were developing colour awareness. The children took a line for a walk. They were making decisions about the layout of their work, and they enriched the surface with pattern and detail. So they were exploring and experimenting, and they were making design-related decisions.
So from my own point of view, what I wanted to bring across to them and what I wanted them to know how to do was, in order to felt, you can do various things, but I wanted them to understand how to make a two-dimensional object, how to make a ball, which they learned, how to make a long object, and how to make a 3D object. And I told them that if they could know how to make these three things, they could make absolutely anything. And you get one going, anything, and I said, yes, you can make anything. So this is them with the lots of wool. And I decided, I thought about the rules, but I didn't tell them. So I told them to come up with the rules, and I just wrote them down. Now they thought of some things that I hadn't thought of, like don't eat soap, which hadn't occurred to me. But there are things that they know about soap, because it makes you sick, and those tubes that we bought out. I saw one go up, and immediately someone else said, "And don't have any swords." I said, "That's a wonderful rule." So I wrote them up, and because they made the rules, they obeyed them. So they would turn to each other and say, "Don't use that now, don't." So those were the rules that they put up.
So this was integrated again with the SPHE in the curriculum.
So the first session, I wanted to start basic. I wanted to see how they worked. This is them having laid down all the wool, and then I asked them to take the wool for a walk, and they could do any design that they wanted. And you can see that the amazing thing is we had 28, and there isn't one that is identical. So you can see them there. And I decided, in order to make a big piece, based on the space and the fact that there was 28, that we would work individually on the tables, and somehow, I didn't actually know how at that stage, it was going to all come together into one big piece. So there they are, rolling away and wetting it, and finishing the 2D piece.
So there you can see creativity was promoted at this session.
And there's some stories there. There's one here that I really like. I told them that it was like making sandwiches. So in order to make that really, really strong, I had gotten some muslin. So I said, you have to make a sandwich. And I said, okay, so the wool is the bread. And they were like, right. And I said, and the muslin is the ham. And so that was very simple because they'd all made sandwiches. So they all put the muslin in the right place and the wool got on the right side as well. And so they talk about that, about making sandwiches. And at one stage with the rolling, I think we had music, and there's a story in there about how we rolled to hairspray, and this was really, really cool.
The children were preparing for attending the National Concert Hall, so they were singing along as they were rolling.
There's a bit here that says really funny, we rang the lines for a walk, it went crazy, then and it goes on, and there's wonderful spelling mistakes in there too. So then the next session we did wool worms, so it was doing just the long worms. Now I actually thought that the wool worms would have been one of the easiest because you just had to roll, but it was actually one of the hardest. They found this really, really difficult. Here we go with the worms. And they're rolling, and they get tired rolling the worms. Some of them stretching them out, and then we wrote about making worms and wiggly worms and all that. And then the fourth session, which was the 3D bowls, I think for them was actually probably the most exciting of all of them. It was actually overwhelming. And one of the children actually finished before the other, and I said, we exist within it, and you had to take out the plastic. And when she turned it inside out, and everyone noticed that it was 3D, it was just like, And then they all started rolling really, really, really fast. They couldn't control because they all wanted to have one of these. And then they decided these were really the coolest things. Because not only were they bowls, you know, somebody decided they're going to hold their pencil crayons, and other people decided they were going to be hats. So there's some pictures there of them. It was this part to them was just magic. And there you go. You can see them taking out the bubble wrap. I love this one. He turned it out, and then we had loads of hats. Everyone put it on their head, and we had hats everywhere. So it was like little Charlie Chaplins everywhere, and them thinking this was just brilliant. And again, we wrote stories then about making the bowls and how fantastic that was. And all you had to do was make a semicircle out of plastic. Now, this part here, so we had done the 2D pieces. We had done the worms. We've done the 3D piece, so we covered every sort of form that you had to do. And I said, now we have to put this together. I said, how are we going to do this? So they made lots of different suggestions. We wrote them all on the blackboard, and I said, now we're going to think about it. We're going to go home and think about it, how we're going to put this together. And we decided then on a shape. So we were looking at shapes, triangles, squares, circles. Then we went into complicated hexagons and pentagons, and some of them were boggling their minds how to say more sides on a shape. So what happened, we decided on hexagons. And there was 28, so 28 pieces of paper were cut out. And when I went away during the week, they arranged them and tried different types of layouts. What you could do with 28 of these hexagons. And they thought about that, so they came up with, well, we could just do 2009. And I said, well, you try it out and let me know if 28 pieces can do out 2009 and what they could do with that. And then the big deal was, I said, well, we're going to have to cut them into those shapes. And they were really, really worried that some of their work might get cut away. Now, I had actually gone home after they said hexagons and measured out to make sure that the hexagon shape that I designed would actually cover and no bits and pieces would get cut away. But this was nerve-wracking, and I said to them, look, when I come in, I'll have the template, and it'll be like framing a photograph, and you decide and we pin it down. So this is that stage now.
And again, we can see integration with maths here.
So there I am, and I cut out that template, and I would place it, and they would decide how that was going to work and how that was going to be cut, and then that was just pinned. And they were very happy with that because they realized that all the work was there. And these were some of the designs we came up with. So that's the one that actually went ahead. And initially we talked about putting the bowls sort of on certain points to hold it together. But they decided then no, that they didn't want it that way. That they wanted them on the ends like squids with legs sticking out. And I said that was fine, whatever they thought. So there were different ones there. Now I'll just explain. If you notice there's 2 orange hexagons there. And those 2 orange hexagons move around. I think that's just a very interesting point. You might not understand it otherwise. There were 2 different hexagons on this. And that has to do with, on the first day, I did a very bad mistake of not counting the children. So I came in, and they looked like a lot of them, and I assumed they were all there. But they weren't. So 2 of them had the flu. So when I was distributing the wool, I thought to myself, God, I have more than I need. So I just kept distributing. I thought, well, they'll just make fatter squares. And sure enough, then the following class, there was 2 more pupils, and I was like, oh, all the gray wool is gone. So I mixed around various different colors, and there was two hexagons that were slightly different. So we made those as special squares that would pinpoint and would have to be strategically placed. So in that design, you can see where they are, and on that one, you can see how it varied. So that's sort of why we had 2 orange ones. And then I got them all, and I said, now you've designed this, you have to put it together. So in groups of about 5, there was tables all around. They came up and they would look at the design and they would lay it out and see how that worked. And they laid down their hexagon next to the worms that they made, next to the bowls that they made. And that's them there on the floor. Then the next stage was that we had to put it together. And I sort of said sewing. Now sewing was a scary word because we don't know how to sew. So what I said what we were going to do was we were going to thread the worms with pencils into the holes like shoelaces. And they all got that. So this is shoelacing rather than sewing. And I was making holes with a hammer there. So all the stories went up, and we had a massive big art day, and that's it up on art day, up in the gym.
This is the annual art exhibition in the school, and the project was ready for us, which was just wonderful.
Yes, we worked very, very hard, and there was a lot of work. I have to say, like, there was a lot of work that was done within the class, but there was an enormous amount of work when I wasn't there, because I would, you know, I'd come in and they'd say, you know, I had to roll that worm at home for ages, you know, and there was a lot of work that they did in between. And you can see there that up in the school, you can see the white wall, it really comes across and it's all pent up. Here it's a little bit floppy. They'd be disappointed that their squids weren't sticking out, but there you go. And those were our sponsors that helped us out, and the suppliers. And that was basically the project, and we were all very, very pleased, and the kids especially.
Yeah.
Really, 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 really pleased. Yeah.
Well, the program has been very beneficial for both pupils and teachers in Scoil Carmel. Our pupils have had the opportunity to engage with an artist in the classroom, and our teachers have participated in a workshop facilitated by Gina. So this has enabled them to be upskilled in the area of felting. So it was a very enjoyable experience for everybody in Scoil Carmel.
Lots of fun too.